So here's the little vegetable garden that my husband built for me 6 years ago. I love the fence and the gate, which he built with an M in it because we have a lot of M's in our name. And you see the electric fence that we put in at bear height last year, which seems to have worked because I haven't had any bears this year. And that could have something to do with the woofing you hear in the background. He's a very enthusiastic woofer. So here's my vegetable garden. Just a quick panorama, and then I'll walk around. I really do love the steps. You'll see I have a heart trap there because I had a woodchuck last year. And I think just the presence of that have a heart trap has deterred him. Also, I put some mothballs in a jar underneath my compost system, which you can see up in the background there. I've got double compost bins, and he was burrowing underneath them. So this is my slightly shadier patch of the garden on this side. So I grow my leafy stuff here, and also my beans. You'll see these two gigantic trees, sort of bushy things within the boundary of the fence. Those are two pawpaw, an Allegheny and a Taylor. They grow as sort of thickets and they're putting runners out everywhere. So I haven't had any pawpaws off them yet. I think it's a bit early, but I'm getting a bit nervous because they're so enthusiastic. So I've got lots of greens here. I gave myself permission to grow things other than vegetables in the vegetable garden. So last year I planted a new dawn rose, which I'm absolutely loving. I planted them in saffron boxes. You see, my husband built these blue stone boxes because we have planted so much saffron, and every single time the woodchucks get them. So we planted 500 saffron crocus bulbs. And you can see by the fact that I'm growing a rose in the saffron box that also was a failure. They are lure to chipmunks. They get in anywhere, so I've given up on growing saffron. This is the cut and come again that I let go to seed, which is really great. And lettuces that I'm picking as fast as I can. And arugula. That's my self-seeding garlic bed over there that I just harvested about 10 days ago, and I will plant again. I think I'm going to try some new garlics this year. And I was just cleaning it out and noticed that I've got about 6 volunteer squash. I don't know what they are because I've never planted squash over here. It's kind of seedy cilantro going on. That there should be some. I've planted some fresh seeds underneath there. And in the back you see this. I just scattered, this is rather a thin soil bed over here and it doesn't get much sun. And I had 3 squashes that I didn't know what to do with, so I just threw them in here. And they're not doing much as expected. But I got some amaranth seeds at a seed swap and just threw them in here because I didn't have anywhere else to put them. And gave up on them. And 2 weeks ago, that's about 2 months after I put the seeds in, they started sprouting. They're really a beautiful colour, actually. I like them for the foliage. And for some reason, I have a few down in the driveway, and I've got no idea. Maybe they fell out of my car when I was bringing the seeds in. This is my self-seeding kale bed. I sort of replenished it this year, so I put some different kinds of kale. I think I've got 4 or 5 different kinds of kale. You can see the seeds that I just plopped there that... I guess it's not, well, some of it's self-seeded and some of it I seeded. And I've got fennel growing here, much as I'd like to eat it. I'm leaving it for the butterflies, and the caterpillars are having quite a fine time on it. And I do love the flowers. Beans. I have so many varieties of beans. I don't even know where to begin. My favourites are the red scarlet runner beans. And I've had a few of those. They're very late. Everything you'll see in my garden is late because I don't start things inside before the frost date. And I plant things, seeds actually, when the soil gets to above freezing. So I plant quite late. And that's just the way it is. I also had some squash that I didn't know what to do with. I'd sort of run out of space, so I planted them underneath the bean teepees, and they are really enjoying it. I've got lots of zucchini underneath here. Isn't that interesting? So this is a very thin soil, but a very fertile soil, because I've been growing beans here for ages, so that they fix the nitrogen in the soil, and I just cut them off at the base, so I leave the roots in, and the beans just love it over here. Unfortunately, it gives the wall in the back gives the chipmunks pretty easy access. This is a little radish bed with some ornamental cabbage. I didn't know what else to do with, so I just threw in there, and it's kind of fun. This one's got, I think, 5 heads on it, which is rather odd. So I'm leaving it for the cabbage. About half of my stuff gets eaten by caterpillars, but that's all right, because it takes 7,000 to 9,000 caterpillars to raise one single chickadee fledgling. So I think of it feeding the birds as well as our family. And here we have the sunny part of the garden. The upper story, just so you know, I won't take you up there. I've got my composting system up there. I've got fruit trees, everything: apple, apricot, pears, plums, peaches, nectarines, persimmon, and then I've got all the soft fruit, which I'm going to put in a cage next year. Lots of gooseberries, red currant, pink currant, black currant, blueberries. What else? Ooh, champagne currants. Boy, those are good. My asparagus beds, 2, one on either end here, got overtaken by weeds, and it's not a good place for them. So next year I'm going to take this red currant out here. It's a jonquille's ventet, Dutch red currant, and I'm going to relocate it to with its fellow soft fruit plants and put them in a cage, and I'm going to turn this bed here into an asparagus bed. But at the moment it's my beet bed, and I've got my 3rd batch of beets coming in here. I swapped things around this year just to do a little bit of crop rotation. Normally I grow all the Solanaceae on this bed right here, the peppers and the eggplants and the tomatoes for heat in the centre there. But this year I'm growing herbs and leafy things here. I always grow a lot of parsley, a lot of basil, a lot of sage, because I dry them for the winter, and we make an enormous batch of pesto and freeze it. This is a little niche in the wall for my fig, which is far too happy. So happy that it never gives me any figs. So next year it's coming out, and I'm going to try a different variety. This is Chicago Black, hardy to zone 4, which means it's hardy to zone 4, but it doesn't necessarily produce fruit. So anyway, these are, I like volunteers all over the place. So this actually is a seed that was seeded from seeds of scabiosa, wild scabiosa, that I found in the French Jura that I reseeded up here. And we've got some Greek sage coming in here, seeds that I bought in Greece, and some more cut and come again, and more of my little niches for geraniums, for my lovely nostalgia of my French garden. And we've got Bright Lights chard, which is doing quite well, and some more arugula, which you can tell that I absolutely love, on the end. And let's see, of course we have the tomatoes on this fabulous serpentine fence that I designed and my husband built, and then somebody told me that there is actually a name for this, although I can't remember what it is. I don't know, I probably got maybe, I think I've got 15 tomato plants this year, and maybe 10 varieties. I had such a dreadful year with tomatoes last year that I finally caved in and got some sort of new hybrids like Big Boy and Big Mama, and they're all doing just about the same this year. So of course I have my Canadian red rhubarb, which is very good and very hardy. Little patch of borage for the birds, and some comfrey. There were 4 things in the garden that I grow in pots, comfrey being one of them. Really, I just grow comfrey to put on the compost because it's very high in potassium and calcium, so it's great for your compost pile. I've got my eggplants growing here. I've got the typical Italian ones, lots of Japanese ones. I've got those little, the little creamy sort of egg-size ones. And I do recommend this tomato support system. It's amazing. We put it in 5 years ago and look at how sturdy it is. And when they get to taller than that, then I lop them off. I'm also, I grow tomatoes and not tomato leaves, so I take off probably at least 50% of the leaves. And you want to make tomatoes, anything that grows to produce seeds, like peppers, tomatoes and eggplant, you want to make the plant worried so that it wants to reproduce. So I've got, these were just moved, these eggplant and peppers right along the bottom here, because they were being swamped by the killer squash, which I posted a couple of days ago. But it's escaping the garden, which is pretty funny. So the three things that I grow in sunken pots, and you'll see that's a sunken pot right there. So that's horseradish that somebody in this group gave me last year, and I made my first horseradish. Lemon balm, which is in here, and I strongly advise not to grow lemon balm because the blasted thing seeds all over the place and creates these enormous hairy clumps. And the two mints, of course, which will run and go crazy all over the place if you don't plant them in a pot. Traditionally, as my grandfather used to do, farmers would save their rusted out buckets and they would plant mint outside the kitchen door in a bucket with a rusted out bottom so that it would contain the mint, and they would make mint sauce for their Sunday lamb roast. And let's see, we've got a couple of red tomatoes, which is very exciting. I only grow marigolds as nostalgia for the days when I thought they did something, but they do something actually. They make me happy, but they don't do anything about, deterring insects or anything like that. But they make me happy, so that's important. And I wasn't going to grow hot peppers this year, not at all, not one single one, which means I have 13 of them this year. And my husband, who is Dutch, loves Indonesian food, so I'm going to make Indonesian sambal olek, which is hair-raisingly hot. I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I will. And my brother-in-law is going to send me a recipe for it. I know I'll have to probably wear a hazmat suit to make it. I have 2 lilacs growing in the corner, one in each corner, because the colonial settlers here always planted lilac as a sign of good luck, and they brought it from Europe with them when they came. I've got marjoram. I do use a lot of marjoram, and right now I'm just leaving it to go to flower for the bees, but I'll cut it back and have a second flush of it and dry it. Got my chive bed, which I cut back a couple of weeks ago, so that's starting to come in. I've got nigella all over the place. Very nostalgic for me. These seeds came from my grandmother's garden in Wales. Anyway, I see I've got busy ants here. So that's my vegetable garden. It makes me extremely happy to be in here. The first 2 years I had it, I gardened it ferociously, and I had enough produce from this for a family of 6. And seeing as we're a family of 2, I've sort of moderated my gardening so that the wildlife gets about as much, if not more of it, than we do. Which is fine. I've decided that there are 4 stages to gardening: planning, planting, maintaining, harvesting, and preserving. And I love the planning and planting and maintaining, and sometimes I get a little lazy at the preserving stage, but that's okay. The birds benefit. All right, everyone, I hope you enjoyed the tour.